Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krita Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Today happens to be Monday, so we are doing Aparokshanubhuti. And Aparokshanubhuti, we have to do 100th verse. That is Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam also means only Mananam. Mananam means discerning. Mananam is not just going into logic, discerning between Atma and Anatma. Atma is Swata Siddham, it is experienced by you. You are the one who experiences the world is called Anubhavita, and what is experienced is Anubhutam. There is Anubhavita. You are indeed you are the experiencer, and the world is experienced, and you are the experiencer. As experiencer, you are self-evident. That is why we say that Sushupti is also an experience. This Anubhuyamanatva. Shankaracharya says Sushupti also is experienced. Even before life, it was a blackout. It is not a believed blackout, please. It is from the life's point of view, you look at it as something that is experienced blackout. Even after death, it is an experienced blackout. Sushupti blackout is also experienced blackout. Every blackout is not a believed blackout. You say, you assert yourself that it was a blackout. That any assertion is there is a clue to, any assertion is a clue to the fact that it is an anubhava. Any assertion is a clue to the fact that it is anubhava. Otherwise, you won't assert. And therefore, it was a these present objects were not there. And that is why Nididhyasana means only discerning between Atma and Anatma. Atma is available, is Swata Siddham. Anatma is Anubhava Vishayam. Anubhava Swarupam is Atma. Anubhava Vishayam is the Jagat. And therefore, both of them are evident. And therefore, discerning between the two, seeing the difference between the two, is what is called discerning Viveka. Atma and Atma Vivekaha. This Atma and Atma Vivekaha is what is called discerning. And it's not going into the logic of it. It's not necessarily. Logic is not a pramanam for knowing the self. Because if it is Swata Siddham, then where is the need for logic? If your existence is Swata Siddham, and if you know that you are Swata Siddham, then there is no need for logic. And therefore, Nididhyasana means only discerning, please, not going into logic. Mananam also means only discerning. Shravanam is also discerning. You hear about discerning, you do Mananam about discerning, and you do Nididhyasana also about discerning. When you do Mananam always, then it is called Nididhyasana. Nitaram Jhatum Ichha. Nitaram means always. Jhatum Ichha. The Dhyan karne ke liye Ichha. It means discerning. Dhyatum means here discerning. Vivektum. Vivektum means vivek karne ke liye. Vivektum Ichha. Atma Anatma Viveka Karna. And it has somebody in this, when the author of this book, whoever, we don't know whether it was Adi Shankara or later Shankaracharyas, we don't know, but that's not important, Ji. But what is important is that the author has said that the 15 angas, Nididhyasana, have to be practiced. You have to be aware of those practices. What is practice itself, he explains. It is nothing but seeing again and again. It is not a practice, means it's not an action. A value has to be, you have to be every day, you have to be little clear about values. And these values also are explained, they are interpreted in Vedanta differently. And therefore, it is only understanding the truth alone becomes the understanding the truth alone helps you to self-control and everything, even mauna reflection, Everything is helped by the knowledge of the self. Without knowing yourself, however talented you are, the ignorance comes in the way of understanding. Comes in the way of interacting, and therefore you will not be able to control yourself. You will not be able to do yama, niyama, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These are all various pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These Rajayogi steps are there. These Rajayogi steps are interpreted differently in Vedanta, and I am going to tell them all. We are going to see all those interpretations. Tripanchangani atho vakshe. Tripanchangani means tripancha. Tripancha means 15. Tripanchangani. Angani means the limbs. Tripanchangani, 15 limbs. Atho, now vakshe. I am going to tell. Purvokta sihe labdaye. In order to know the truth. In order to know the truth. Even though it is said, what was said to gain it. I say that means it is, you don't have to gain it, you have to recognize it, because these words are very different, very difficult. Please, you should be very careful about the words that you use. Labdhaya means it's not gaining, it is knowing. Please, gaining is only in order to know, in order to recognize yourself, in order to experience your existence, in order to recognize that your existence is within experience. You don't have to you don't have to experience it. It is already within the experience. It is Anubhava Swarupam. It is Anubhava Swarupam. And recognizing it as that it is Anubhava Swarupam is what is called knowledge. Therefore, Tripanchangane Atho Vakshe Purvoktasya Labdaye Taishcha Sarvaihi Sada Karyam. Taishcha Sarvaihi Sada Karyam means you have to always do them. You have to always practice them. Nididhyasanamevatu. They are all called Nididhyasanam. These 15 angas are called Nididhyasanam. Like the hands and feet. Once we say the body, it includes the hands and feet, the fingers, etc. In the same manner, when we say all the 15 limbs, make the Nididhyasanam. What is the Nididhyasanam is going to say? What is the interpretation of Vedanta of the 15 angas? This is going to be said later on. But now Nididhyasad Rite Praptihi. Nididhyasad Rite means without Nididhyasanam. Na Praptihi. There is no gain. There is no gain means you cannot know yourself. Without Nididhyasanam, you cannot know the truth. Praptir na bhavet. You cannot know the you cannot know the Atma. Sachidatmanaha. You cannot know the Sadatma, Chidatma, and Anandatma. Chidatma and Anandatma. You cannot know without practice, without being a good person. Tasmat Brahma Nididhyaset. Therefore, meditate upon Brahman. Nididhyaset. Nididhyaset means always discern between Atma and Deha. Always discern between your existence, Anubhava Swarupam, your existence, and Anubhava Vishayam, the object, the universe. So Nididhyaset, which includes the body also. We cannot say Nididhyasana means only discerning between the Atma and the body alone. It is discerning between Atma and Anatma, which includes the body. Which includes the body. Anatma includes the body. Anatma includes the body. Anatma includes the thoughts. Anatma includes everything that can be that is objectifiable. Whereas Atma means that which is unobjectifiable, that is you. The unobjectifiable is only yourself. And therefore, Tasmat Brahma Nididhyaset Jignasahu, a student who is interested in understanding, let him practice Nididhyasanam. Let him continue with Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam, Shreyase Chiram. Shreyase means for his well-being. Shreyase for moksha. Chiram means for a long time. Let him do Nididhyasana for a long time, so that he can let him discern between his existence and the Anubhava Vishayam for a long time, for the sake of moksha, Shreyase. Yamaha. And then now he counts the 15 limbs. Yamaha. Yamaha means self-control. Niyamaha, that is also self-control. Tyagaha, renunciation. Mauna means keeping quiet. Deshascha kalataha. Deshascha means what is space, spatiality, what is space, what is time. It is also defined. What is time? Asanam, Moolabandhascha. Asanam. Asanam means what is asanam? What is Moolabandhascha? Deha samyam cha. Drik sthitihi, and concentrating your sight. Drik sthitihi, concentrating your sight. Prana sanyamanam, controlling your breath. Chaiva pratyaharascha dharana. Pratyaharascha means it is that is also comes under self control only. Pratyaharascha, and having being a minimum, depending upon the objects minimally. You don't have to indulge in things. Pratyaharaha means you depend upon things very minimum. Pratyaharaha. You don't depend upon you take the objects only for survival. You don't take the objects to relish them, to enjoy them, etc. You take the objects only for survival. Pratyaharascha dharana. Dharana means concentration. And you do what is dharana? How does the Vedanta interpret? This is all going to be said. Atma dhyana, then dhyanam. You meditate upon yourself. Atma dhyana. What is that? Dhyanam also is being interpreted. What is dhyanam according to Vedanta? Samadhischa. What is samadhi? This is Rajayogi. Rajayogis always go by. They follow all these 15 angas as though they are actions. But here it is going to be interpreted differently. Samadhischa. Samadhischa means Sammyag adiyate asminiti samadhi. The Atma itself is called samadhi, in which the entire universe is embedded. The universe is embedded in which, that is called samadhi. Or samahita buddhi, you're resolving everything. Samadhi, according to Raja Yoga, is different. That is thoughtlessness, freedom from all the thoughts. But then you are very much there, and that you becomes the topic of Vedanta. And what exists in all the thoughts, and what exists without all the thoughts, that is also that is what you are. And therefore, like when the wave is there, water is there. When the wave is not, the water is there. And that is what is called the Anvaya Vyatireka Nyaya. And that Anvaya Vyatireka, Atma has Anvaya and Anatma has Vyatireka. And that is what is called discerning between Atma and Anatma. Atma and Anatma. And therefore, Atma Dhyanam Samadhischa Proktangani by Kramat. And I have explained Proktani. They have all been said it by me. They have all been explained by me. They have all been mentioned by me. Angani by Kramat. Kramat means in a sequence. In a sequence, there are all these 15 angas have been mentioned by me. But then what is then Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanat? This knowledge, Sarvam Brahma. Now is going to be the Vedanta is going to interpret each anga. What does Yama means? What does Sanyama means? Yama Niyama means? What does Kala mean? What does Desha means? All these things. What does Mauna mean? All these things are going to be interpreted by Vedanta. According to Vedanta, what are they? And according to Raja Yoga, what are they? According to Raja Yoga, everything is will bond. It is all will. You use your will to avoid the thoughts. You control the thoughts. You avoid the thoughts. And even when you avoid the thoughts, the thinker, you are there. The self is there. And being aware of that self is what being understanding that self is what is called Vedanta. The self that is there. When the thoughts are there, when the thoughts are not there. When the thoughts are there, you are in and through the thoughts. And when the thoughts are not there, you are there as the appreciator of the absence of the thoughts. And therefore, that Atma becomes that becomes the Atma. That is the Atma. That therefore you are the Atma. You are not Deha, please. And therefore, Sarvam Brahmeti. It is said the Vedanta interprets these verses. What is Yamaha? Ayamiti. Sarvam Brahmeti. To understand that everything is Brahman. And therefore, Sarvam Brahmeti, Vijnanat. By this knowledge, Vijnanat means by this knowledge, Vijnanat, Indriya Grama Sanyamaha. And only with the knowledge you can control yourself. Indriya Grama means the entire, all the sense organs are controlled. The sense organs cannot be controlled by will, because the will also gets tired. And when the will gets tired, you can't really. Will-born control is different from knowledge-born control, and therefore, by controlling everything by will also gets tired, and therefore, you have to understand yourself, and therefore, Indriya Grama Sanyamaha. Yamoyamiti Samproktaha. This is called Yamaha. Samproktaha means it is called Yama. What is Yama? Understanding that everything is Brahman. Understanding everything is Brahman is what is called Yamaha. Why? Because that leads to self-control. Or it leads to, when you know that everything is Brahman, naturally the senses become under control. So you are not controlling by the will. It is a natural control. It's a natural control. When you know the truth, then they become automatically controlled. You have now no work with the senses. And you are only involved in knowing the truth. And therefore, the senses are not involved. The senses are not uncontrollable. The senses remain quiet. When the senses remain quiet, that is called control. The quietude of the senses is what is called control, please. It is not it is not controlled by will. It is controlled by jnanam. You have to understand this point very clearly. Again and again you hear. There is a difference between controlling by will and controlling by knowledge. Abhyasaniyaha muhurmuhu. This has to be continued for a long time. Muhurmuhu means again and again. This has to, abhyasaniyaha means this has to be practiced again and again. That everything is, there is no practice, please. There is no practice means in action. You can only practice an action. Here it is only you have to make an effort, repeated effort to understand the Atma, how everything is yourself, how everything is yourself. Everything is Brahman, everything is the self, everything is within the self. And therefore, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, even blackouts, before the birth blackout, after the death blackout, everything is in the Atma. This has to be understood. And this has to be understood again and again. Make an effort, repeated effort. That is what is called, one of the Shradlingas is Abhyasa. Abhyasa means not practice. I don't want to translate it as a practice. It is a repeated effort. You have, please make repeated effort of discerning and understanding that Anatma is inseparable from Atma. Anatma is within Atma, and therefore Anatma is not parallel to Atma. Anatma is inseparable from Atma. This you have to understand. This is called Yamaha. Sajatiya pravahascha, vijatiya tiraskriti. Pravahascha. You can, thinking of the same thing. Sajatiya pravaha means, sajatiya means the similar things. Like, when you think of Atma, then only you think of Atma. You think of Atma and Atma, with the discerning, then you only think of, that is called Sajatiya Pravaha. And at that time, so many distractions come. That is called Vijatiya Pravaha. Every distraction is called Vijatiya Pravaha. Vijatiya Pravaha Tiraskaraha. You avoid the distractions. Distractions are called Vijatiya Pravaha. And you are thinking of the topic, that is called Sajatiya Pravaha. And therefore, Sajatiya Pravahascha Vijatiya Tiraskriti. Anything that is unlike, that is any distraction from the Atma and Atma Viveka, any distraction from it has to be rejected. Tiraskaraha. Tiraskaraha means rejection. Tiraskaraha, rejection. You reject any distraction. And therefore, that kind of accepting the topic and rejecting the distraction is what is called niyama. Is called niyamo hi parananda. This is called niyamaha. Yamaha niyamaha. What is niyamaha? Accepting the topic, accepting the discerning, and accepting and rejecting the distraction is what is called a niyamaha. That is also a kind of self-control. And paranandaha, it is indeed paramanandaha. It is indeed blissful to think like that, to think of the topic of Atma yourself and to avoid the distractions is indeed paranandaha. Niyamat kriyate budaihi. Niyamat means in a disciplined way, it is repeated, effort is made, budaihi by the wise. The wise always repeatedly make an effort to concentrate on the topic and avoid the distractions. And this has to be done again and again. This is done by the wise again and again. And you have to also do. You are also a wise person, and therefore that you have taken to the Vedanta itself makes you a wise person. Yes. Because in this world there is nothing else. In this world you don't have to live for the flesh. You have to live for the soul. What is the soul? What does the soul mean? What does the self mean? This has been explained away, and it is not karma. Karma gives you only a result. Whatever gives you a result, it gets exhausted after giving you a result, and therefore actions always give results, whereas vichara always highlights what is, and therefore it doesn't create. It only illumines. It only comes to like when you understand the any law of self gravitational law, the ignorance about the law goes away, and you only understand the law gravity. You don't control. You don't create the gravitation. You don't create the gravitation. You only understand the gravitation, the fact. In the same manner here also, you don't create yourself. You don't create knowledge. You only understand yourself. You don't create yourself. You only understand yourself, and therefore anything that creates the new thing, that creates that purifies a thing, that modifies a thing, that makes you reach a thing, is what is called a karma, as in it's called an action. Whereas vichara is something different. Even though it is manasam, even though it is done by the mind, yet it is something different from the manasamapi. Even though it is a mental action, even though the vichara is done by the mind, but yet it is not manasa kriya. It is not manasa. Even though it is manasa kriya, it is not a karma. It is not a creative of a new result. It is not a modification. It doesn't modify a thing. It doesn't purify a thing. It doesn't make you reach a thing. And therefore, vichara is different from karma, please. Karma always does something. It creates a new thing. Whereas here, and therefore you don't have to worry that if you don't have a lot of money, it doesn't matter. If you can survive to know yourself, that is enough. Ji. If you have enough money to survive, that is enough. Because you have to survive in order to know the truth. You have to survive in order to know the truth. And therefore, without survival, then again you enter into a kind of layasthanam. You resolve. When the individuality resolves like in the sleep, you can't know the truth. In sleep, you are only ignorant. From the Jagrata Avastha, if you look at it, in the sleep is only a state of ignorance. You don't know yourself. You are not aware of the truth also. And therefore, it's not possible, and there is no problem there in Sushupti. Because in Sushupti, you are peaceful. And therefore, it is only after waking up, when you see the objects, then alone you say, what happened to in Sushupti. Then you think, you remember Sushupti, you recollect Sushupti. And that Sushupti, these objects were not there in Sushupti. These objects were not there. Even to make that statement, I have to see the presence of the objects. And therefore, these objects were absent in the Sushupti. What is absent? Yeah, nothing but these objects. These objects were absent in the Sushupti. In this manner, I think. And therefore, when a person has no embodiment, he cannot even think. If he has no embodiment, then he has no problem. And therefore, when he has embodiment, only from the embodiment point of view, he can know that he can correct that error called embodiment. Embodiment itself is an error, and therefore From the error point of view, there is correction, please. Without there being an error, there cannot be any correction. So Sushupti, from the Sushupti point of view, Sushupti from the Anubhava point of view, there is no error there. It is Swarupa Avastha. But then from the Jagrata Avastha, it is considered to be a state of ignorance. And therefore, that state of ignorance is corrected because it is from the embodiment point of view. From the embodiment point of view, all the three states are within Anubhava. And therefore, you are the Anubhavita. Anubhavita means you are the experiencer, and they are all experienced. And therefore, as the experiencer, you are self-evident. As experienced, it is Pramana Siddham. And both are evident to you. And therefore, discerning between the evident and evident. One is Pramana Siddham, one is evident through Pramanas, one is evident, your own existence is evident, Swata Siddham. Between the Swata Siddha Atma, Anubhava Siddha Atma, and the Pramana Siddha Anatma, you have to discern, you have to see the difference between the two, is what is called Atmanatma Viveka. This Atmanatma Viveka makes you understand that the Anatma is not parallel to Atma. Anatma is indeed non-separate from, inseparable from Atma. This understanding is necessary, and therefore Nemat Kriyate Budai. Therefore, even if you don't have any great amounts, you are not an industrialist. Don't worry about it. If you have money, because even if a person has a lot of money, he will only spend that much money for his survival, and the rest he will leave and go away. Therefore, it is just a confusion. Ji. You don't people feel that if you have money, that for survival, that should be enough, because you should survive in order to know the truth. And even if a person has a lot of money, I would like to say one thing, that he also can spend only that much of money for his survival. Everybody, the rich and the poor, they only survive, please. And in old age, they just die. And therefore, after some time, a person may die. And therefore, when a person dies, he doesn't carry anything with him. And therefore, this must be understood by you. And therefore, that you are understanding Vedanta. Understanding Vedanta is more important than becoming an industrialist, please. Becoming an industrialist may be useful because you give an employment to many people, etc. That has laukika utility. Laukika utility means in the world utility. In this empirical world, it has utility. But Vedanta has a spirituality. Vedanta is a spirituality. Your spiritual nature is understood, and therefore yama niyama, these two things. And therefore, if you are not an industrialist, don't worry about it. If you don't have too much of money, don't worry about it. And that not to worry about it is what is called tyaga, please. That is next verse says, tyagaha prapancha rupasya. Prapancha rupasya, renunciation of the whole universe. In renunciation of the whole universe means renunciation of this worry, renunciation of the worry, that I don't have too much of money, that I am not enjoying the objects, that I am not enjoying this and that, is what is called, that is worry. And that kind of worry is renounced. Prapanchopas, tyagaha prapancha rupasya. And therefore, renouncing the prapancha, that it is mithya. Prapancha is mithya. Prapancha is mithya. Renunciation. Renunciation means it is tyagaha. I don't really indulge in things. I don't indulge in the objects, and these objects are all renounced. Prapancha rupasya chidatmatva avalokana. By understanding that the entire universe is chidatma. Chidatmatva avalokana. Chidatmatva means that it is indeed chit and atma. It is indeed consciousness and chit and atma. Chidatma. Chidatma means it is conscious self. It is all nothing but conscious self. Because the objects are not separate from the Anubhava Siddha, Anubhava Vishayas are not separate from Anubhava Swarupa. Your existence is Anubhava Swarupa, please. And the universe is Anubhava Vishaya. There is a difference between Anubhava Vishaya and Anubhava Swarupa. Anubhava Vishaya is Pramana Siddham. Anubhava Swarupa is yourself. That is Swata Siddham. And therefore you are experiencing the world. You can use anything, any word that makes you comfortable, Ji. Either you call it as Anubhava Vishayam or you call it as Jnana Vishayam. It makes no difference. It is called Jnana Vishayam, call it Jnana Vishayam. You are Jnana Swarupam and it is Jnana Vishayam. Whereas if you use the word Anubhava, then you are Anubhava Swarupam, and this is all called Anubhava Vishayas. But the objects are called Anubhava Vishayas and the Atma is Anubhava Swarupam. Atma is Jnana Swarupam and the objects are Jnana Vishayas. And therefore you have to understand one thing. Tyagaha Prapancha Rupasya Chidatmatva Avalokana. You can renounce the world by understanding it as Chit and Atma. It is nothing but Chidatma means it is only conscious yourself. Chidatma. Iti Avalokana. Avalokana means seeing it, understanding it. Avalokanat. Avalokanat means understanding it. Tyagaha Prapancha Rupasya Chidatmatva Avalokanath. Tyago hi Mahatam Pujya. It is indeed, this is called Tyaga, please. Tyaga means not just giving something and then telling the whole world that I am giving this. You don't have to tell anybody. You renounce it, anything. You renounce the renouncer it himself. And therefore, Tyago hi Mahatam Pujya. That is called Tyaga and it is indeed worshipped by great people. It is respected. This kind of Tyaga is respected by great people. Mahatam Puja, it is something that is respected. It is something that is valued. This kind of renunciation is valued by the great people. Mahatam Puja, Sadhya Mokshaya Mokshamayo hi yataha. Sadhya means right now, in this very life. Mokshamaya, a person is interested only in the Sadhya Mukti. Jignasu is interested only in the moksha in this very life. Moksha means freedom from dukkha, freedom from the struggle, freedom from kartrutvam, freedom from bhoktrutvam, freedom from everything, freedom from dukkha is what is called Sadhya Mukti. Freedom from the very life, freedom from very embodiment is what is called in this life. In this life is what is called moksha, Sadhya Mukti. Sadhya Mukti means the moksha, mukti in this very life itself is what is called Sadhya Mukti. Sadhya Mukti means right here and now, the Mukti. Sadhya means now. I'm translating it as in this life because it is better here and now. It means in this very life. When you are alive in this very life, Sadhya Mukti means in this very life, the moksha to moksha maya yataha. Because yataha means because mokshamaya, mokshamaya. This life is something that is meant for moksha, and therefore, it is this life itself. In this life itself, the struggle has to be understood as mithya. The desire has to be understood as mithya. The pleasures have to be understood as mithya. The objects have to be understood as mithya. The whole universe has to be understood as mithya. Anatma has to be understood as mithya, and Atma has to be understood as Satyam. The one who experiences has to be understood as Satyam, and what is experienced, the object, is Mithya. And the Satya Mithya Bhava is only until it is understood. Satya Mithya Bhava is understood. Once it is understood, there is no Satya Mithya Bhava, then it is only Nirvisesham. This point also is very important, please. Satya Mithya Bhava is only there that long. Like like your being a mother is there only until you go to sleep. Once you go to sleep, there is no relationship with any son, any daughter, any husband. There is no relationship at all. This is my house. You are living in the house, but there is no feeling that this is my house, this is my body, etc. Aham, there is no ahamidam, is not there. Mamayadam also is not there. And therefore it is Swarupa Avastha. And therefore that is Susushti as Anubhava is cited in order to show the Swarupam of Atma. That therefore, from the Anubhava, from the embodiment point of view, you say that it is a state of ignorance, etc. That is all right to say. But when a person renounces the prapancha has to, and therefore Satyamitya Bhava is understood. There is no Satyamitya Bhava. There is only Nirviseshatvam. Satyamitya Bhava understood, like Ishvara understood, is no longer Ishvara. The source understood is no longer the source. It is Nirvisesham. The water is understood as the source of the wave. When it is understood, it is nirvishesham. There is no relation to wave is water. Water is also water. That means there is only water, Advaitam. And therefore, in the same manner here also, Anatma is Atma. Atma is also Atma. Anatma is also Atma. Anatma is inseparable from Atma, means it is Atma. And Atma is also Atma. And therefore, Atma alone is Advaitam. And therefore, the Satyamitya Bhava, any relationship is there until it is understood. Once it is understood, there is only Nirvisheshata. Tyaga Prapancha Rupasya Chidatmatva Avalokanath. Tyago hi Mahatam Pujyaha Sadhya Mokshamayo hi Yataha. Mokshamayaha Yataha means because Mokshamayaha means this life is meant for moksha. This life is meant for moksha. It is meant for knowing the freedom. If you can be bound, then bondage can be removed also. Any error can be corrected. That is the very definition of the error, please. That I am Deha is itself a self-error. It is self-error, please. Life is a self-error. Life is itself is a self-error. Before in Sushupti, where is embodiment, please? There is no embodiment. I am is a conscious being, and Deha is inert, and I am Deha. To say that is a contradiction, and therefore to feel that is of course a contradiction, and therefore it is an error, and the error is something. If there is an error, it is available for correction, and therefore it may not be, the error is not, it is anadi, and therefore it is timeless, and its correction also is timeless, and therefore it is all happening in the timeless being anyway. The error happens about the timeless. The timeless is taken to be the in time, and that is what is called the error. And the timeless is corrected. The error is corrected in the timeless, and therefore the error is in timeless, and its correction also is timeless. And therefore, even though you discern between the Atma and Anatma in time, but yet it is the knowledge is always in time. The knowledge is always timeless, and therefore discerning is in time, but knowledge is not in time. Knowledge takes place the timeless, because you understand that I am the timeless self, and therefore त्यागः प्रपञ्चरूपः यतो वाचो निवर्तन्ते अप्राप्य मनसा सह. Yato vache nivartante means from which all the, from whom the words beat back. Manaha yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. The mind also, the thought also returns. Thought also can't reach the truth. Thought can't reach the truth. The words also can't reach. Nirvishesham cannot be reached by the words and the thoughts, and therefore aprapi manasa saha. That is called understanding this, that the truth is something that cannot be reached by the words. That is nirvishesham. It is that nirvishesham that is taught by the Shruti as the source, please. That it is not that first it becomes the source, then it is the nirvishesham. Aisa nahi. It is indeed nirvishesham. Even when but the Shruti teaches the nirvishesham as the source. The Shruti teaches the Nirvishesham as the source, and therefore Shruti understands all that is there is only Nirvishesham, and therefore, and that Nirvishesham is taught by the Shastra as Kalpana, as a Prakriya teaches them. It teaches it as the source, Atma as the source, and therefore it is the Nirvishesham that is taught as the source, please. Otherwise, if it is understood, then it is again Nirvishesham. What is taught is understood, is Nirvishesham. It is only when I understand the water as the source of the wave is water, that is understood, and the water is also water. Then water alone is. Water alone is. The wave is Mithya, and the water is Satyam. And the water is Satyam, and the wave is Mithya. When it is understood, there is no Satyamithya Bhava. Then there is no there is only water. Water alone is present. Satyamithya Bhava understood, there is no Satyamithya Bhava. It is Nirvishesham. Satyam is Nirvishesham. Mithya is non-separate from the Satyam. And therefore, it is said here, Yato vacho nivartante aprape manaso saha yan mauno. Understanding it in that manner is called maunam. That is called maunam, please. That is called That is called maunam. It is not just not talking is called maunam. It is understanding the truth is called maunam. Understanding the truth that it is free, it is not accessible to the words and thoughts because it is nirvisesham and maunam, yogabir gamyam, and it is something that has to be understood by the yogis also. The yogis also need to understand it. Yogabir gamyam means yogabihi avaga, it is gamyam. Yogabihi avagantavyam. Yogis have to understand this point very clearly. Or those who understand the Vedanta clearly, by them it can be reached, it can be understood. Yogabir gamyam tad bhajet sarvada buddha, and that alone has to be followed. Buddha sada, sada means always, Buddha a wise man. A wise man should always follow. This is the maunam. What is maunam? Understanding that the truth is not accessible to words and thoughts because it is nirvisesham. It is one without a second. It is not there is one God. That is we are not talking about monotheism. We are talking about God alone is. Whatever is atma, anatma, the entire universe is atma, your existence, because it is available only as perception. Nobody experiences it as a creation. Everybody experiences it as a matter of perception. And therefore, it is only perception. It looks like an object of perception until we understand until we understand it as a perception. Just as dream is a matter of perception, looks like an object of perception. But when you wake up, you understand that it was nothing but a perception. It looked as though an object of perception, but it was nothing but perception. But in the waking state also, the objects look like objects of perception, but they are nothing but perception. This has until it is understood, they look like objects of perception, and therefore this has to be under. This is this and therefore nirvisesham has any relationship is gone when the nirvisesham is understood. When yato then vacho yan man yasman nivartante. Vacho, the words, yasmat, from which nivartante means they return. The vachaha means the words, yasmat, from which the truth, nivartante, they return. The words return from what? Tad vaktum kena shakti sakyate. The who can describe that kind of self? Because the words cannot reach it, the thought cannot reach. Who can think about it and who can talk about it? Even Shastra is only a kalpitam. Shastra is a prakriya is only a kalpitam. Shastra is also kalpit shastra. Even though it is kalpitam, the kalpitam can correct the kalpitam. It is shastram is only it is meant to correct the kalpitam. Avidya is kalpitam and anadya avidya is kalpitam. And shastra is also kalpitam. One kalpitam can correct the other kalpitam. Just as the kalpita, uh, what we call lullaby, kalpita lullaby, can make you go to sleep. It may not reach this. It may not reach the self. It may not reach the sushupti. The lullaby may not reach the sushupti, but it makes you go to sleep, sushupti. That is enough. Similarly, here also, the Shastram, even though it is a Kalpitam, it can make you correct the avidya. It can make you correct the avidya. And even though it presupposes avidya, it can make it, it is meant to correct the avidya. And all other branches of knowledge, they are avidya only. Whereas Shastram is, it presupposes avidya, but it is meant to correct avidya. And therefore, Shastram is different. Shastram has a different approach, please. Prapancho yadi vaktavyaha. If you have to describe the prapancha also, prapancho vaktavyaha, sopi shabda vivarjita. Even prapancha has to be, it is shabda vivarjita. Because shabda cannot talk about the prapancha. Because prapancha, when before it is understanding, it is mithya. It is not there. As a thing as it is not there. As a thing, it is not there. As a perception, it may be there. But as a perception also, if it is understood, it is not there. And therefore, what is not there, how can you really describe anything? and therefore Shabdavarjitaha itself is not there. How can you describe it? And therefore it is said even Jagat is Anirvachaniya Khyati. Anirvachaniya Khyati means it is an era, but it cannot be nirvachyam. Tattva anyatva anirvachyam. Tattva, it is neither the truth nor other than the truth. It is neither you nor other than you. It is not parallel to you. The tattva anyatva abhyam anirvachyam. That is called anirvachya shabdaka definition. Itiva tad bhaven maunam. This is what is called maunam. Satam, sahaja sanjatam. It is called sahaja maunam. Understanding the truth is called the natural maunam. Natural keeping quiet. Naturally keeping quiet. Gira maunam to balanam prayuktam. Bala, only for the children. Not talking is a maunam. Is prescribed only for the children. For those who don't think. For those who don't think, it is prescribed for them. Prayuktam, Brahmavadvihi, by the Vedantis. Brahmavadvihi means by the Vedantis it was prescribed by the Gira, by the words. You have to do, you do not talk. This kind of prescription is given for them who are they are like children, means those who can't do the thinking, those who can't understand the self. For them it is said that all right, you do the maunam. Maunam means don't talk, etc. It is being prescribed by the Brahmavadivihi. Brahmavadivihi means the Brahmavadis, means Vedantis. Those who say that there is Brahman to be understood. Prayukta means it has been prescribed. Balanam, it is only for the children it is prescribed. Maunam to Gira Maunam means not talking. Gira Maunam means not talking to Balanam Prayuktam Brahmavadivihi. And therefore this is what is called for the children. It is prescribed, but that is not exactly what is to be done. Maunam means not going about writing in the paper. That becomes more disturbance. You are thinking so many thoughts. You are thinking of a book, you are thinking of a pen, and then you are thinking of writing. And when the writing, your handwriting is different, and my mine, and therefore I can't follow your handwriting. And then you write quickly. And therefore, it is better to say what you want to say, and therefore instead of writing. And therefore, for Balanam, it is a nema. It is all right for the thinking people. There is no need to be quiet by the language. You don't have to not talk. And you can only think. You can only think about it. You can only know the truth. And therefore, knowing the truth is what is called maunam. It is just really for those who can't understand, those who can't discern, they are prescribed. Brahmavadivihi, it is prescribed by the Vedantis. All right, you be quiet. That is a kind of a niyama, because talking makes many confusions, and therefore you don't talk. And therefore, those who don't think, they talk too much, and that creates a confusion around. And therefore, also this niyama has been prescribed by the Brahmavadis. And therefore, it is said, Ada Vanteja Madhyeja Jana Yasmin na Vidyate. This is what is called, what is Desha? Desha means, what is Ekanta? Ekanta does not mean really there is a place. Ekanta means your existence alone is Ekanta. Adi mein kuch nahi, madhya mein kuch nahi, ant mein bhi kuch nahi. Adi, madhya, ant mein, you can never find out which is Adi, which is Anta, which is Madhya. You can't know. Adi is considered to be Srishti, Madhya is considered to be Sthiti, Anta is considered to be Laya. Adi, Madhya, Ante. In Srishti Sthanam, in Laya Sthanam, in Sthiti Sthanam, there is no object at all. Ada Vante cha Madhye cha Jana. There is no other person. There is no Jana. Yasmin na vidyate. In Atma, in your existence, there is no embodied, there is no individual, another individual. There is nothing to whom you can talk to. And therefore, there is an understanding in that manner that your existence is ekanta. Your place is not important. Understanding yourself is important. Therefore, Ada Vanteja Madhye Jano Yasmin na Vidyate Yenedam Satatam Vyaptam, and the truth by which everything is pervaded. Everything is pervaded, it is present in everywhere. Not everywhere is present in it. That should be understood, Ji. This is something a very subtle point. It is not, and it is not present, it is not pervasive in space. The space itself is present where? And the space is located in the space free. Space is located, it is not located in space. The space is located in the space free. The time is located in the time free. And therefore the time free is that it is not the presence of time is located in the absence of time. The presence of time is located in the time free, in the time free presence. In the time free presence is Atma. In the time free presence, the space also is located in the space free Atma. Enedam Sattvam Vyaptam Sadeshaha Vijanaha Smruta. That is called Ekanta. That means your existence is Ekanta. You are Ekanta, please. Understanding your existence is Ekanta. Otherwise, you go to any place, there are people, and they will create problems. And therefore, there is everywhere, anywhere you go, there is noise. And therefore, don't look for a place to meditate and all those things. That is all unnecessary. You stay in your house, and your house is the best place, and you stay in your house, and you listen to Vedanta, and you discern between Atma and Anatma. That you get down to the point, please. You don't have to do all those magic, all those what we call all those things, all those actions. You don't have to do all those what we call like a monkey does, all that monkey business you don't have to do. You don't have to do going in looking for ekanta. Somebody came into India. I'm looking for a quietude. I told him, I say, you are the best person. You are the best place where there is nothing else. You read you study Aparokshanubhuti, you study Vedanta. In Vedanta, the topic is you, and therefore when you are the topic, and the topic, understanding the topic is more important than looking for a quiet place, because wherever you go there is noise, and therefore wherever you go there you don't look for a quiet place, you don't look for any special place. You are the best, you are indeed the locus of all places. You are the locus of the space itself, you are the locus of the time itself, you are the locus of the body also, and therefore you are locus of the thoughts also. And therefore all everything anatma is non-separate from you, and therefore understanding this makes you free from any satyamitya bhava, makes you nirvisesham, please. And the more of it we will see in the next class. Thank you, Ji. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much. And when after it is said, after what is that Dashara, we'll go to Ramana Kendra when the corona is gone, and be careful to see that you are well, and you are able to think, you are able to reflect. You have to be properly, you have to be properly alive, please. You have to properly look after yourself. You should not get any COVID. You should not get any what is monkeypox, etc. These are all nonsense things. They should not come to us. As we are disciplined, and wash your hands every day, and take bath every day, and therefore if you take and change the clothes also every day, change every day, and then in that case, then you don't have any problem. You don't go to the kind of to meet the people, and you don't have to shake hands. You do say namaste. It is better to touch your own hands instead of shaking hands. This day shaking hands also brings the monkeypox also. Monkeypox, you touch it and it comes to you, and therefore you don't have to shake hands with anybody, please. And therefore continue doing listening, and continue to do discerning, and then we will come to we will meet Ramana Kendra. In Ramana Kendra also we will have this kind of online classes also will be there, but some people will come straight away to see the Swami and to hear the classes straight from the Swami. And that we will see after the Dashara, after Dashara. Thank you very much.